Terrible story going around. A 13-year-old girl was on the internet at a chat room, and she performed various sexual acts for someone she thought was a young boy her own age, and in fact he was 27 years old, and people are outraged at this. Well, just hold on a moment. What this man did was appalling, of course, but surely the real issue here is a 13-year-old girl is on the internet performing acts of sexuality with another person who she doesn't know. Where were the parents? Why was a kid doing this? Family values? They just don't matter very much. I do love the internet and public opinion, don't you? Michael Coren Show. Join me. Hello, good evening. Welcome to the Michael Coren Show. Hope all is well with you out there. It won't be for long because it's that was the week that was, our TW3 Friday panel. A lot to talk about. Let's get on with it. Sid Ryan is president of CUPE Ontario. Great, as always, to have you here, sir.
Here, Michael.
I get a lot of emails about you these days.
Oh, man. I got a lot, too.
Paul McKeever, leader of the Freedom Party of Ontario.
Good day, sir.
Does that mean that people who don't support you don't want freedom?
Absolutely. Good.
And Claire Hoy, who's a freelance writer and a broadcaster and many other things too, I'm sure. Let's get the big issue out of the way. Zidane headbutting, Italian defender, being called nasty names. Do you care?
I don't care an awful lot, other than that he was an idiot to fall for it and get thrown out of the game as a result. I mean, anybody who's ever played any professional sport knows that there's trash talking goes on in every sport. And I mean, the reason that people do that is they try to con people into reacting. So they'll get penalized. And obviously, in the case of the Italian guy, he was successful. He got what he wanted, didn't he? So, you know, but as far as the World Cup goes, I mean, talk about a Mickey Mouse way to decide a world champion. Well, a shootout.
Yeah, there should be headbutting.
A shootout. Did somebody, by the way, I wanted to ask you, because you and Sid are both really into that silly game of yours. Yeah. But was somebody wanting to rent the stadium like right after the game, so they had to get out, so they couldn't actually finish the game? They had to clear the field because one of the local German teams had rented the pitch. Yes. I don't know. Is that what it was?
Yes, Claire. That's exactly what it was. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I just wondered.
What I find really interesting here is Zidane is this terrible bad guy, and suddenly, they made a remark about his mother, and it might have been Islamophobic. Oh, that's okay then. He was justified. What he did was wrong. So some idiot insults him.
Stupid.
You're a millionaire. You're a sportsman. Move on.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, okay, there's going to be a situation where in a sport, hockey, you know, fighting's going to be sort of hard to determine whether it's fighting or is it just a body check. Here, this is completely, well,
it was provoked. He provoked him, and it was.
It was outside of the realm of what normally happens in the game, so it was wrong. And
but you know,
not that interesting though.
Not that I would ever do such a thing, ever. But let's say someone really provoked me, I wouldn't headbutt them in the chest. You know, I mean, it would more like this area.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to headbutt you in the chest if you're not careful.
The Glasgow handshake, as they call it, right? You get a headbutt in the forehead and you bust the guy's nose open. Hitting somebody in the chest was the weirdest looking headbutt
But
I've
that
ever
would
seen.
hit your head more if you hit him in the
No,
head.
actually, it's not.
No, if you get it in the right place, it doesn't.
No, it's not, exactly.
I've been told.
It's quite lethal.
But I think he was trying to get away with it, and he knew in the head it would be obvious there'd be blood and so on, but he was doing this, and it wasn't seen. I mean, maybe the fourth official saw it, but, you know, he was sent off against Saudi Arabia, Zidane. I can't imagine they made some anti-Muslim comment. He does that nasty streak the same way Figo does and Wayne Rooney does, and when you're paid this amount of money and you represent your country, I don't think you should behave in such a way.
Probably if you went and checked his record when he was younger, he's probably a lot worse for getting sent off. And I guess over time, as a professional, you learn to get under control. But remember the Manchester United player from France as well.
Cantona?
Cantona jumped into the stand and kicked a supporter. I mean,
Cantona. Well, yeah, as a Crystal Palace fan, probably deserved it.
more than likely. If it was Crystal Palace, I'd say he did deserve it. But no, but seriously, I mean, at that level, you got to get under control. But I think the combination of the adrenaline rush and whatever the remark was, and he'd been frustrated as well. Like, you know, he's playing a brilliant game. I thought he was, but the team wasn't performing that well at that stage, and frustration. The game was slipping away, and I guess he just lost it.
Also, he had his nipple twisted, which I thought was a euphemism, but it actually did. And the Italian guy, I mean, it was amazing when he said...
The Italian guy twisted his nipple?
Apparently, yeah. He said, "I'm a simple man. I don't even know what a terrorist is."
No, he said he was ignorant.
Yeah, pretty ignorant. It was...
He's not unfamiliar with the purple nurple, though, apparently.
No, I don't know. There's a lot of hypocrisy here, too, because the French look to Zidane as this icon of multiculturalism. When France played Algeria at soccer, there were a lot of French Algerians there who were booing the French anthem, cheered the Algerian anthem, and then were chanting Al-Qaeda slogans throughout the game. So the idea that somehow it's all okay because most of your team are from Africa is French hubris. In fact, they have real issues with multiculturalism and immigration and assimilation, and they think, well, the soccer team's different. That's not different. I remember one of the French players, during the riots, he said, you know what, my brother used to shop at one of the malls they built in the suburbs, but he wasn't allowed to work there. So,
well, you know, Michael, this is coming from an Englishman who's got one of the worst supporters in the world. I mean, the English are absolute total rowdies when they travel outside of England. I'm surprised this time around that he didn't wreck Germany.
Empire by other means.
But they rounded them all up before the game
I think
started.
they did, actually.
Yeah, that was our B team. The A team couldn't leave the country. They lost their passports. But you know, you've got... Really, I'm actually quite proud of the fact that there must have been, I don't know, 50,000 at least English fans there, and about 200 or 300 were involved in trouble. It's always a minority of morons who do it. There's a lot of people with their families. And
you know, it was really nice. Actually, the celebration in Toronto was, you know, like the West End of Toronto must have been madness. I wasn't in town then, but there weren't any really untoward incidents.
Very few.
I mean, a few. You know, there's got to be some, but I mean, there was no damage or anything. No, it was well done, I thought.
Well, when
it's nice to see that.
They closed off Blue West.
As opposed to Edmonton, by the way, during the hockey thing. When they rioted and caused all sorts of damage.
Boston in the World Series. I mean, you had the similar things. Soccer fans, much nicer than baseball and hockey fans.
No, I didn't say that.
That's what Claire Hoy said. Claire Hoy said it. Back in a few moments. On the Michael Coren Show. We'll see you very soon. Don't depart us. Stay with us. So do we talk about the Middle East or do we not? I mean, you know, we were being nice to each other about Zidane and soccer and Claire Hoy criticising baseball fans. No, he wasn't really. I'm flying out to Israel very shortly, actually, in a few hours. And I'll be going up on the Lebanese border. And, in fact, I got an email from the person who is looking after me saying, don't worry, your hotel in the north is out of the range of Katyusha rockets. You'll be OK. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that one. It's, you know, fairly comforting. When Hezbollah goes into Israeli territory, not disputed territory, by the way, I mean, even those who want a two-state solution say this area, it's not the Golan, it's part of Israel. This is not Palestinians in Gaza. These people tend to be Iranian, from all parts of the Arab world, some Lebanese. In that country, Lebanese government can't control them, go into Israel, attack Israeli soldiers. I don't see how Israel cannot respond to this. It's not Gaza, it's something entirely different.
I think it was predictable what was going to happen. Sooner or later, somebody in the Arab world was going to fill the vacuum, I guess, in some ways, and aid the Palestinians in wherever thinking they had. They thought they were probably coming to the assistance of the Palestinians and opening up another front, which Israel is going to have to take actions. So what I don't understand is how bombing civilian whether it be airports or whether it be houses, like there was one family of 10 were killed. I don't understand how destroying the infrastructure of a country is going to get back these two soldiers or the one soldier in Gaza where they're continuing to destroy infrastructure there. I really don't. And I don't know how they feel that after it's all over and done, by bombing, as the Minister of Defence said from Israel, bombing the Lebanese back 30 years. How destroying that country's infrastructure is going to make Israel safer in the long run. That's the part that escapes me.
Statements about bombing people to Stone Age back 30 years, rivers of blood. All sides make these statements. The languages, Arabic and Hebrew, are both rhetorical, Semitic languages, and often in translation, breaking the bones, and they're not helpful to Europeans and North Americans. Both sides. I mean, everyone's uses this sort of language.
But this is not just language, Michael. This is actually happening.
Well, I don't think it is happening.
Because they bombed houses, Michael. They bombed civilian areas. They're dropping bombs in areas where they're saying there's, Hezbollah leadership were meeting there or something like that. The fact that there were 10
the
kids
reality of the situation is
doesn't make any difference.
Hezbollah has been shelling. I think Israel has shown incredible restraint on the northern border, and I was up there not very long ago. They've been shelling for years now, over and over again. Israel withdrew some time ago, and when Israel went into Lebanon, and the south is Shia Muslim, as I'm sure you know, they rejoiced and welcomed the Israelis because the Palestinians had been lording it over them and were very oppressive. And sadly, Palestinian leadership has not been responsible when it has been in various countries. It wasn't responsible in Jordan either. Israel went in, it came out again. There's been shelling and shelling and shelling. Towns like Kiryat Shmona, Kibbutz Manara have been attacked, kids have been going into shelters, and Israel has done very little in response. I think it has been, I mean, you have to give some credit, it's been very calm. Finally, this happens. They attack the airport. They're saying to the Lebanese government, you have to try and control Hezbollah. We're not holding you personally responsible, but you've got to control these people. You can't allow our civilians to be attacked time and time again.
That kind of action
You really have drunk the Kool-Aid on this one. Can they do nothing right in your eyes?
Michael, I'm just watching and reading and seeing in the newspapers.
What are you reading?
What am I reading? I'm reading all kinds of newspapers from around the world, Michael, on what's going on. And in particular, what's going on. Listen, are you denying that they dropped a bomb and where they killed 10 children in a house?
I'm not even aware of this action, but I will look it up when I get home.
There's 14 people killed, 10 of them were kids.
But if that,
between the ages of 4 and 18 years of age. What kind of civilized nation does that kind of stuff, Michael?
That is certainly regrettable, but the number when Jewish civilians die, that's also an issue.
That's also uncivilized.
Where were the protests when Israeli kids were being killed? So finally Israel retaliates, and now the world has to condemn.
Michael, you're getting into protest now. You're asking me a question about is it justifiable? I don't think it's justifiable from any nation anywhere in the world to bomb civilians and to bomb civilian infrastructure and impose collective punishment on a race of people.
Where is the civilian infrastructure in Lebanon that's been destroyed?
The airports have been destroyed.
It's not a civilian infrastructure.
It's a civilian airport, Michael. No, it's the only international airport in Beirut.
Beirut Airport is also a military airport. If you know Beirut Airport is both a civilian and a military airport. It's where all of the military aircraft land.
Okay, you always try to find a justification.
I'm trying to give you a fact about what really goes on.
Every airport technically, the airport up in Ottawa is technically,
No, it's not a military airport.
Michael, I fly out of it every week practically, and you can see military airplanes in the distance in the airport.
And if they were attacking another country, they'd be
what I'm saying is that every airport, Michael, potentially can be used by military. So to turn around and say that this is the military airport, therefore let's bomb it, that's okay. And in any event, you just said a few moments ago that they're not blaming the Lebanese government on it. So if you're not blaming the Lebanese government,
trying to give the facts of what is happening.
Why then bomb the airport?
I'm trying to tell you what is really going on there.
Oh, you know what's going on, and the rest of us are just all ignorance.
No, some people are ignorant.
Yeah, sure we are, Michael. You know, you've got all the answers.
Some people are ignorant. Well, Sid, I do understand the situation. I've been there enough times. I haven't come to it recently and become radicalised by
Okay, is that right, Michael? You know, I've been dealing with it as well for quite some time.
Lebanon is a broken country. There's a civil war. There are 3 groups, Christian, Sunni Muslim and Shia Muslim. The Lebanese government quite obviously would like to have stability. There's been relative stability. Israel's been part of that. It said we will not interfere in any way. You've got to stop Hezbollah shelling our civilian population every single day. You've got to stop the attacks. Finally, they actually invade... Hold on, let me finish it. They invade Israel. They kill soldiers. They kidnap soldiers. Don't do anything.
So you're saying. So therefore, what you're saying is, you're just admitting it yourself. They're saying to the Lebanese government, "We don't believe that you're responsible. We want you to get control of Hezbollah. But by the way, we're going to bomb your airport anyways.
The words
and we're going to bomb these homes.
The Lebanese government has to. The Lebanese government has to take action.
I'd like to know what you would want Israel to do. They were attacked. Israel. What would you want them to do?
There were 2 soldiers. You've got to keep it in context.
I understand.
So there were 2 soldiers were kidnapped and 8 soldiers were killed in a raid, which is, you know, it's by any stretch of the imagination is not acceptable. But you don't go in and begin to bomb civilian population because 2 soldiers were captured.
What do you do? What do you want Israel to do?
Well, they're trying to get. I would
attack
assume they're trying to get the.
territory?
They say they're trying to get the 2 soldiers back. I would imagine they should try and use some diplomatic means and try and use the international community to try and bring them back.
Diplomats with Hezbollah?
Well, who else? They've done it before. They've already negotiated trading of prisoners with Hezbollah in the past.
But do you really think that they should be trading prisoners?
No, they haven't. No, they haven't. But I don't
in 2004, in the year 2000, they negotiated a trading.
I don't think you understand the situation.
No, Michael,
you're thinking it's just one raid with 8 soldiers killed and 2 kidnapped. There have been hundreds of rockets fired for the past 5 years from the Lebanese border. Israel has said time and time again, the restraint has been extraordinary. It said to the government, please do something about this. There are links with Syria. I mean, people deny it, but there are contacts with Syria. Don't do this. Control these people. Iran is playing a game. Iran is a terrorist state. It murders its own people, including a Canadian woman who was a photographer who was beaten to death and raped. And the world says nothing about that. Iran is now playing games.
That's not true. The world has condemned that, Michael. Don't make those
hardly
broad
anything
statements.
About it.
They have condemned. That's been condemned all around the world. Our own Canadian government has condemned that.
So you've boycotted Iran.
You make these broad
Has CUPE boycotted Iran?
That's you're giving a silly argument now.
I'll be silly. Have you boycotted Iran?
Now you want to get into.
Is there a boycott of Iran?
What does that make, Michael? We're talking about Lebanon.
Let me ask a silly question. You've admitted a woman was raped and murdered.
You talk about drinking,
is there a boycott of Iran?
You talk about drinking the Kool-Aid. This is like the pro-Israeli lobby right now. This is all they ever talk about is why aren't we boycotting?
Have you?
Why aren't we boycotting Iran?
Have you?
Because we're not boycotting Iran. The boycott right now is taking place inside of Israel. That's what we're looking at.
Okay. So the fact that a Canadian citizen is raped and beaten to death, the fact that there are people filling the prisons because of their political views, the fact that there is no basic human rights of people
there's no boycott. And there's all sorts of problems in every country in the world. And we haven't gone out.
I'm trying to be reasonable with it. When people
you're not being reasonable at all, Michael. You're having silly arguments,
when people say you have a double standard and you choose the Jewish state to victimize and you ignore other countries, how do you respond to that?
There's nobody victimizing Israel here. The ones who are being victimized, Michael, and you talk about drinking the Kool-Aid. Take a look at what's going on your TV screens, Michael. It's not the Israelis that are being victimized. It's a lot of Palestinians are being victimized.
The only Palestinians in Lebanon are in refugee camps because the government won't allow them to live in major cities.
Oh, okay, yeah. Now that's really drinking the Kool-Aid.
I don't know what to say to that. I'm telling you what is going on, and apparently when I have an opinion that's contrary to yours, I'm either silly or drinking Kool-Aid.
No, you're the one that starts the whole allegations around drinking Kool-Aid, Michael. That's your argument that you were making a few moments ago.
Yeah, because it does... I am trying to find a middle ground here of saying, look, this is not Gaza, this is Lebanon, a country, a nation-state is responding to constant attack and terror, and all I get is... No. They're overreacting, they're murdering innocent people.
Let us try and...
Do you want them to do nothing?
Here's what you're trying to find a justification for bombing civilian infrastructure.
The justification is overwhelming.
For bombing civilian...
Defending their people.
It's a violation, Michael, of United Nations and Geneva Convention to bomb civilians and civilian infrastructure. Now, you may shake your head at that, but that's a fact of life.
It's horrific if it's true.
If it's true, that means that the United Nations is morally wrong, not that Israel is. I mean, we can't be judging. We started this conversation with, this is how many people died. Surely head counts are not an indicator of what is moral and what is immoral behavior. Israel is reason's foothold in the Middle East. And if Israel doesn't have a right to defend itself, reason itself doesn't have a right to defend itself.
So I think it's okay then, in your estimation, it's okay then for one soldier to be captured and you go in and kill 85 civilians and bomb the infrastructure, and that's okay?
Those who are responsible, either because it's happening in their country and they're doing nothing about it, or because they're the ones doing it themselves, have no moral defense. Okay. They are in the wrong.
We've got a break. In the break, we're all going to drink Kool-Aid. Nice Kool-Aid. Back in a few moments on the Michael Coren Show. We'll see you soon. Don't go away, all right? Welcome back to your Michael Coren Show. In the commercial break, Sid said to me, golly, you know what, Mike? You're right. Claire, go. I mean, it's a very difficult situation. You know what I've been appalled about, and I think we might all agree on this. This is a very tense situation. There is war. It could be greater war. Iran's always on the side. If they get involved, it could lead to international terror in our country. Trying to hear some sort of coverage on the radio of this. There's nothing. There's so little discussion. And what is banal and infantile. And it's very disappointing, actually. And so we don't care anymore about the rest of the world until it really hits us directly in our homes. What should be done here? What should Israel do?
Well, I think they're doing what they have to do. I don't disagree. I think, I mean, and I've been critical of Israel sometimes over the years, but I mean, they've been attacked, and Iran's behind this. There's no question about it. Syria's involved in it, and I don't know how else. And as you said, I mean, they've been bombing Israel for years. I don't know how else it's ever going to stop. I mean, how long? I don't think you really can sit down, Sid, very successfully and negotiate with people like the Hezbollah. They're just not the sort. I mean, it's like sitting down with Bin Laden and having a reasonable conversation. I don't think it's in the cards. I really don't.
I do believe that the escalation of it, with the introduction now of Hezbollah, has really complicated it tenfold because they're far more militant than what Hamas are.
Yes.
And if you're going to get any sort of an agreement, you may have got it with Hamas in terms of an exchange of prisoners, which I think the Israelis made a serious mistake by not negotiating an exchange of prisoners, which they've done in the past. And I believe at the end of the day, they're going to end up with an exchange of prisoners, one way or the other. They'll end up with it. They will. It's the only way out of it.
These exchanges you're talking about, what do you mean, exchange of prisoners?
There are prisoners, I guess, depending, again, which way you look at the conflict. If you're in Palestine, they'll be viewed as freedom fighters from the Palestinian side.
You mentioned examples of the past where Israel have traded. Which examples are you talking about here?
Well, in 2004 and in 2002, I believe they traded prisoners between Hezbollah and Israel.
These were not kidnapped soldiers. That was something entirely different.
Kidnapped. Soldiers don't get kidnapped, Michael. Soldiers get captured. Kidnaps are civilians.
Then there's a war. If you're saying they were captured...
Didn't Israel just declare a war? Didn't they say we're at war?
No, Israel and Lebanon have a peace treaty, and there's meant to be peace there. There was a withdrawal with the UN in charge. If soldiers have been captured, there is a war, and Israel has not only a right but a duty to retaliate as part of the attack party to respond. Those exchanges... If you want exchange of prisoners, and I'm sure there were behind-the-scenes negotiations taking place, but if you're going to agree to that, you're really inviting any group, any terrorist group, to kidnap various other people. I mean, do remember that a settler, a kid, was shot dead. A man with Alzheimer's, who had to wander around with his name stuck to his suit because he would get lost. All these great people in Hamas said, oh, we've kidnapped him as well. A lot of innocent people, 2 children beaten to death in a cave just 2 years ago. It's not just soldiers being captured,
Michael,
it's innocent people being murdered over and over again.
I understand that, and that's this conflict that's gone on out there for 30, 40, 50 years. The fact of the matter is there's been a history of exchanges of prisoners captured on both sides through the conflicts. Sometimes, yeah. And as I'm pointing out is I don't believe that the current crisis is going to come to an end without some form of an exchange of prisoners.
Some years ago, an Israeli airman...
And it's just been complicated now with the Hezbollah introduction.
Some years ago now, I'm sure he is dead, an Israeli airman was captured. I mean, in Arab territory, never returned. There were many attempts, and there were offers to exchange prisoners. Israel's always said that there are certain people they won't release, others they will.
You know, there's another side of all of this. The so-called convergence plan, or the withdrawal, the unilateral withdrawal, which he wants to make from West Bank now, has been essentially derailed.
Sure.
I can't imagine how inside of Israel now they're going to get any form of public support. And that political party...
Do you blame Israel for that?
I'm not saying I blame them.
I mean, in such a climate... I mean,
public opinion has obviously hardened now. There's no question about it. And I think a lot of it as a result of the overreaction in the beginning. I think if they had used the diplomatic channels that were, Egypt were trying to... Mubarak was trying his best behind the scenes, and he said he couldn't really find a partner to help to negotiate when he was trying to talk to the Syrians to put pressure on Hamas. Well, the Israelis were just rebuffing him at every moment. Well, he didn't really want the dialogue or the exchange to take place.
I don't think that's true. I do believe that Syria will fight against Israel to the last Palestinian and the last member of Hezbollah. But putting Gaza aside for a moment, this is a very different situation. And if you really think that Hezbollah cares so much about the Palestinians, I think you're misreading them.
I didn't say that at all. I just said I believe that they've opened up a front now that they see, which makes it immeasurably more difficult to find a solution because they're not... they're not
Hezbollah
in the same frame of mind.
Treated...
Hamas would look weak now if they were to negotiate some sort of
Hamas has a tangible goal. I mean, it's sometimes vague, but it is to a large extent tangible, and it's Palestinian nationalism. Hezbollah is something very different. They've treated other Muslims in the most appalling manner, Christians even worse. They've treated native Lebanese terribly. allied with Syrian soldiers who came into that country and would rape and kill and torture. And the Syrians finally were pushed out, only after the assassination of a Lebanese leader, and the war did very little to try and get rid of them. And that occupation was not spoken about very much. Lebanese leaving the country in large numbers, an attempt to almost expunge a whole culture, the Christian culture, from that country. I'll say again, I don't think the Lebanese people want Hezbollah there. At the same time, Israel can't just say, well, we understand that, so we won't do anything. And they've closed the airport down. I fully understand the Israeli reaction. I think it's been comparatively moderate. I can assure you that Israelis do not want the deaths of innocent Lebanese people. Even out of self-interest, they wouldn't want it. But you can't keep saying, shell Israeli children, kill Israeli children, Israeli civilians don't matter, and if Israel responds, now we have to condemn. It's a double standard, and they've seen it so many times, they don't care anymore what the world says.
Nor should they. Because really, Israel's cause is the cause of the whole world. As far as I'm concerned, if we encourage a situation internationally where we're saying, you know what, they've only taken a couple soldiers, just give them a couple out of the prison and they'll give them back. What we're saying is that appeasement is preferable to justice, that compensation is preferable to justice. But you can't have a free world, you can't have a rational world, and when you have irrational groups pushing a free country, blackmailing a free country. It cannot happen.
They weren't looking for exchanges of one or two for one or two. It was
Probably
100 or 1,000.
Sure, of course.
More than a series. It was a huge number. Change of subject, something else. Lots of other things too. The cards are full of them. They're all very interesting. Don't go away. Welcome back to Michael Coren Show. It's half-time, and at half-time we reintroduce the panel. Sid Ryan, President CUPE Ontario, used to be my friend. No, he still is, I hope. Paul McKeever.
Oh, you drank the Kool-Aid.
Shut up. Yep. Paul McKeever, leader of the Freedom Party of Ontario, who stood against Sid in the last election.
I did in the riding of Oshawa.
Good. Punch him.
Well, that'll be after the show.
And Claire Hoy is a freelance writer and
I
abroad.
didn't stand against anybody.
No, you don't know what we said about the attacks in India. I think India has reacted quite moderately at this point. They don't know who did it. I mean, there's an idea of who did it. But India is a wonderful example of a working democracy, 1 billion people. They have their problems. My golly, I think they've achieved a great deal. Kashmir, do we know enough about Kashmir? I can see both arguments about Kashmir, they're both the Indian and the Pakistani. But the threat of international terror, I mean, 7 of these on the trains, they knew they'd be packed. There comes a point when you say, we can't do anything about it. If people want to kill and destroy, we actually can't stop all of them.
I mean, the big danger, of course, is and I'm sure that's what the people who did this want, is what's going to happen between the various religious groups. Like, is that going to start, well, a civil war would be overstating it, but, remember the last time that happened, there were hundreds and hundreds of killed between the Sikhs and Hindus started fighting. And I mean, I think that's what people, I think that's the strategy, that people want to start that sort of thing. And I think the Indian government's been doing a terrific job in holding that down for the moment, but boy, I don't know. I mean, if your family or your loved one get murdered in that way, it's pretty hard to tell you to cool down.
There is Hindu
that's the real danger.
there.
Yeah.
But the Muslim, I mean, there have been terrible things that have occurred, but by and large, the Muslim minority, there is coexistence. The Christian minority too.
Oh, no, I understand that, but I'm just saying, but this is the sort of thing which I'm sure that they hoped for, whoever did this terrible thing.
I think it is a provocation to divide, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you were just saying at some point you have to say, is it even possible to prevent this? And I think you do have to say at some point, well, we're not going to be able to meet with perfection, and we shouldn't try to meet with perfection if that means that we're going to turn ourselves into the very people who are attacking us. So I think you have to make sure that your means at all times, although you have to be rigorous, tracking them down, annihilating them, you cannot at the same time turn your guns on your own people, as some people want to do.
But that's a very libertarian response. I've always rejected that we mustn't become like them. We don't want to become like them. But also, we've got a duty to have certain legislation that we can protect our own people.
Absolutely.
And that's just a contradiction of what you've just been arguing 5 minutes ago with Israel. Because people will argue Israel is actually becoming more like the terrorists in terms of attacking civilians.
Golly, but they're not attacking their own people.
No, but they're still attacking civilians.
I lost my hair, and it's Israel.
It's okay if you attack other people, but so long as it's not your own. Is that what you're saying?
If you want to talk about civilians of a country that's, and Lebanon is not attacking Israel, but if Lebanon had been attacking Israel...
No, so I'm not leaving aside, I'm just asking about in terms of attacking civilians. You're saying it's not okay so long as it's your own civilians. In other words, don't become like the terrorists and attack your own people, which we all agree. What you're also saying, though, is it's okay now, though, to attack civilians in another country?
It's okay to defend yourself. If the enemy, if the activists who are attacking your country have embedded themselves, have surrounded themselves...
So kill all the civilians around them as well?
They are at fault. They are the murderers if they are surrounding themselves.
I'd give you the example. I would give you the example of Jenin, which was a hotbed for terrorist groups of all sorts. Israel could have gone in there with aircraft or artillery and just bombarded the place. They chose to send soldiers in there.
Sure.
In the end, and you had Western media talking about this atrocity, and the numbers came down from hundreds and hundreds to 85 Palestinians who were killed, and there were more than, well, there were 24 Israelis who were killed and many wounded. That ratio of 1 to 4 is very, very high. The reason, but Israel lost that man because it was willing to go in there house to house to house to take out the bad guys. Yeah. And virtually everyone who was killed was someone who was carrying a gun. But the world doesn't like to talk about that because that might show Israel in a better light as a country that actually does care. Sure. And yes, sometimes civilians die. You're surrounded by these countries that say, we're going to murder you, wipe you off we're going to sponsor international anti-Semitism and say you're all scum and animals. We're going to
drop a bomb in a house full of children and that's just okay.
Yeah, they do that on purpose.
That's fine.
Because that really helps.
They did that. They targeted the house and they dropped it down the bomb.
There are children, that's killed them.
How did we get back to blaming Israel for what happened in India?
Because Sid is...
No, don't be so silly about this, because the argument...
He's not being silly.
The argument that he was making was that it's okay, don't turn the guns on your own people. Don't go after your own civilians. But it's quite okay to go after civilians
in another civilian versus not civilian.
If the terrorists are embedded in the civilian population, it's okay to kill the civilians, is what you're saying.
What I'm saying, if you're going after a terrorist, and a terrorist has made it impossible to just get him, if he said, you know what, I'm going to make myself safer by surrounding myself with innocent people, he is the murderer of those innocent people,
which, by the way,
the person who attacks the terrorist.
And I know this will not be popular, I mean, but it's standard procedure in the Middle East dispute.
Of course.
When a leader of Islamic Jihad or Hamas or Hezbollah sits in the middle of an apartment building and says, now come and get me, what is going to happen?
Right.
Tragedy, I'm afraid, but that doesn't mean a country has no right to defend itself and its own children.
If that's what your belief is, then the world has gone absolutely mad.
The world is mad, but there are
actually think
islands...
that's okay, that you can just drop a bomb on an apartment building...
The world is mad, but there are islands of sanity.
All the rest of those innocent men, women and children, and you're going to sit here as a Christian and tell me that you believe that that's okay? There's something seriously wrong, Michael, with that line of thinking.
The world is mad, but there are islands of sanity, and I would say you've got to let me finish at some point. I mean, really, eventually I have to.
I don't think you've got a problem getting your point of view across in this show.
Well, Sid, I give you a lot of time to say...
You too. You take a lot of time as well, Michael. It's not a...
Well, I am the host of this show, and
sorry. Okay, go ahead, Michael. You're the host.
Don't be childish. I respect your opinion. I allow you to speak, but you've accused me of saying you can't be a Christian.
Michael, a few minutes ago, I let you run for nearly 5 minutes.
I mean, no, the segments are only 7, Sid. I mean, if I can't make the point, I mean, you can go on, but believe me,
go ahead, Michael.
People can see you.
Yeah, they can see you too, Michael.
Thank God.
I mean, I've got lots of emails, people saying you're continually interrupting when you try to make a point.
Okay,
so come on.
Good.
It goes
I'll
two
interrupt
ways.
again. You just said that as a Christian, how can you justify certain things? You're wrong about Israel, Sid. With all due respect, you've got hold of this topic very recently. You think you understand it, and you don't. When you go there, what I want you to do is to go to the trauma units and show the people who are recovering from terrorism. I want you to go to the Christian towns in Palestine and see how Muslim terrorists will hide behind them so the Israelis have to shell them. Go and look at Jenin and look at the spots where Israeli soldiers died. Look at the number of times rockets have been fired in from Gaza and from Lebanon, and the Israelis have done nothing over and over and over again. It's not just the Jews who are to blame, Sid. This is a complex story and complex issue.
I know you're going to Israel and you're appealing to your friends out there.
Why
but you know
would you
something?
say that?
Because that's what you're doing, Michael. Because you've got this condescending, patronising attitude towards my position.
I'm just not hysterical.
It just happens to be a different position. I'm not hysterical either, Michael. It's a different position than yours. A completely different position. I just asked you the question and you still didn't answer it.
What question?
The one about how, as a Christian, can you justify dropping a bomb on an apartment full of civilians to get one terrorist? You think that that's justifiable? You said a few months ago.
I've never said such
Michael,
a thing.
I'll just rerun the tape. It's exactly what you said. And that was the question I asked you to answer.
You want.
And you said you were going to answer when you were accusing me of interrupting you, and you never did answer the question.
Okay. I have to break in a few minutes. May I now finish?
Sure.
Israel has not only a right but a duty to defend itself. when Palestinian terrorists hide amongst civilians, it is horrible when innocent people die, but Israel tries time and time again to avoid civilian casualties. Tragically, obscenely, sometimes innocent people die, and Israelis speak out against it. I pray this never happens again, but I don't believe the Jews once more have to say, come and kill us, and we won't respond. There are evil people in the world, and to defeat evil, sadly, tragically, sometimes innocent people die. I don't want this to happen, but I do want justice, Sid.
Michael, when you drop a bomb where there's collateral damage, if you want to call it that, that's completely inadvertent because it was out in the open somewhere. When you drop a bomb on a house in a city, you know, or you drop a bomb onto a street in a crowded city.
The Jews should be the only people who act as Christians.
You talk about interrupting, right?
Yeah. Back in a few moments, Michael Coren Show. We'll see you very soon. A lot more to discuss, I'm sure. We'll get round to Israel, though. It's talking about baseball in the commercial break. Stop it.
Okay, sorry.
Piercings. Claire Hoy has a lot of piercings,
I do, yes.
but he's not going to show them to you on this show. School district in Texas bans mouth jewelry, grills, whatever that is, and earlobe stretching earrings. So mouth jewelry and earlobe stretching earrings have been banned by a school board in Texas. The rights of the child to do what the child wants, self-esteem, and I need to wear this jewelry. Look, earrings on well, girls, I suppose boys as well, to a certain extent. In moderation, fine. But so many piercings, tongues and noses and goodness knows what else. Do we agree on this one? It's a bad thing. It's a bad thing.
What's bad about it? The kids were wearing...
They're made in Israel.
That is real bad. Boycott them, I would say then, for sure.
Yes, you would.
The grills, you know, I don't understand.
I didn't know what is a grill.
It's like the like those tooth braces that kids would wear years ago.
Yeah.
But now it's cool, I guess, in LA and places to you can have gold ones or silver ones.
Oh, that's what they are.
And yeah. So I mean, they're pretty ugly looking, I think, but kids think they're cool. So what's the big deal if they're wearing them into school? I don't understand.
Because if they're told not to, they shouldn't do it. If the school says you can do it, do it. But if the school says no, do what you're told.
Well, you know what it's like. If you're a kid and you tell the kid not to do something, then they're going to go the opposite way and do that. Well, so I'm not so sure that's a good enough reason just to say no.
Would you have done that at school, though? If the school said if you do it, you don't come to school.
Michael, we couldn't afford. Parents probably couldn't afford grills. These things are about $200 a pop.
Yeah, I know.
We were lucky to have shoes on our feet going to school.
You know that your parents probably would have said if the teacher said I'm sending you home, you would have been in real trouble. Today it's how dare you? My kids are about to wear this.
I mean, it's a different era, of course, but yeah, there's much more.
Parents more likely today to phone a lawyer and sue, rather than you know say
of course they are.
The kid is doing something he shouldn't be doing. School boards have a right to set standards. I don't have any problem with that.
Well, I agree with you. They certainly do. But it's not so much the jewellery. It's the school saying no to something, and kids saying we matter more than your opinions.
No, they don't.
Yeah, well, I think as long as you don't have to go to the school, then the school can set its own rules. It doesn't matter whether they're talking about clothing, jewelry, or even the kinds of books you're allowed to bring to school. If they have the option of not going to that school, if it's not... Well, that's
effectively they don't.
Yeah, if it's a state school and you're not allowed to go anywhere else and there are no private schools around as an alternative, then yeah, I think you've probably got a situation where the government shouldn't be telling you how to dress. But government, you take government out of the equation. If you're not forced into this situation, if you're not coerced into this school, then it's completely optional.
But government is involved, and they're not going to go to a private school. And effectively speaking, this is a school they have to go to. It's too far to go to another one. So to be practical, they have to go there.
Right.
But the school still has a right to say this is the way you dress. Not to be extreme about it.
Yeah.
But
well,
you don't wear this.
I would prefer that for a public school, it would concern itself with things that are more pressing. I mean, how you dress. Clearly, I'd rather have my kid wear grills, whatever they are, or spikes coming out of his lip, than to be taking drugs or something else. So, you know...
It's not either or, though. Once you say it's moral anarchy and the kids' opinions are paramount, then why not take drugs? Why not beat someone?
You don't have to go so far as say moral anarchy or anything else. You can say express yourself peacefully however you like, But if you're going to come to school and do something criminal, then we're
I
going
don't
to
really
ban
care
you.
about kids expressing themselves. When they're at school, I want them to learn. I want them to master the basics of communication and go out in the world and they communicate as much as they want. But it's not about
I agree 100% with you, and that's why they shouldn't be using cell phones in the classroom.
Sure they shouldn't.
But whether they have a ring in their nose, I don't think it's going to affect whether or not they can read a book.
It's not about the jewellery. It's about the attitude and the assumption behind the jewellery. I want to wear it. You have no right to tell me not to.
Well, that's how it is as an adult. Why shouldn't they learn that good and young?
Because they're children. They can't vote. They can't do various things. I mean,
what would be the logic, though, behind saying, I mean, if you agree that having a ring in your nose or a grill in your mouth is not going to impact on your ability to learn, why then would the teachers want to come out, or the school principals, with such an edict and say you can't do it if it's not interfering with your learning?
I think it does have an impact on learning, because the sort of kids who would demand that they're allowed to dress or behave in a certain way are the kids who tend to be the more disruptive. And school is not about personal freedom as much as it is about education.
No, I think that's...
Yeah, but I mean, you can see that
That's why uniforms are a good idea.
You can see that dogs who tend to be dressed with studded collars tend to be the ones who bite. Well, go after the biting dog. Don't go after the studded collar. I mean, I don't really care if kids who wear spiked earrings are statistically more likely to be disruptive. What I want is that for a school to effectively deal with disruption, and we all know...
Well, I don't know if there's any evidence to prove that any kids who have grills in their mouths are more disruptive than those who don't have grills in their mouths.
They tend to be the ones who are going to see Shakespeare.
No, they tend to be the ones I think that are probably more creative and expressive in their outlook. So you don't think so?
Yeah, no, I don't.
Why wouldn't
I think they're wearing a uniform. I think the kids who dress in that way are wearing their own form of uniform. They're not... I mean, there are kids, certain types of maybe goth types and others, who maybe are quite expressive in their own way. But these kids are saying, it's my uniform, it's not yours. They're not being individualistic. They're following the crowd, but it's a different crowd.
Oh, but who doesn't follow a crowd? I mean, no matter what you're wearing, you're rarely the first. Well, that tie, I could say nobody else is wearing that tie.
I think that could be true. Very quick, last point.
No, I think that we should draw the line at things that matter. And disruption is something the school should be doing something about, and they're not doing anything.
You define what matters, though. I think the school does. If the school says this matters, it matters.
Well, you know, as a taxpayer, I would say that if you're allowing disruption in my child's learning environment, and they are, if you're not teaching them basic morals, and they're not, then I think you've got some bigger problems than whether someone's got a grill in their mouth.
You're half right. Back in a few moments on the Michael Coren Show, and by that point we'll all have grills or something like that. Don't go away.
If you would like to contact The Michael Coren Show, please write to The Michael Coren Show at 1295 North Service Road, Burlington, Ontario, L7R4X5, or send an email to info@michaelcoren.com. If you would like to know more about CTS TV, we invite you to visit our website at ctstv.com.
Welcome back to Michael Coren Show. The burning of Anne Frank's diary in Germany. And there's always someone, but we mustn't overreact. There are a few lunatics who will do things like this. They want the attention. Let's not give too much to them.
This. I liked the response of the German government. They were right off, out the gate straight away, condemned it in very serious, in a very serious way, and basically shut it down. So I thought it was quite admirable of them to come out so quickly, and because normally a government doesn't respond that much to that kind of an incident. And to do it right up front and as publicly as they did it, I thought was very good.
Yeah, I think when you've got a bunch of guys who think that because of their race they're somehow superior, or they somehow get the glory of generations past, how great to have these guys burning books in public view. I mean, we get to see what they're really all about. They're anti-reason, they're anti-freedom, and now we can identify them because they've appeared as a group. Oh, look, it's those guys. They're the irrational ones.
I don't think they care very much. Do they?
Oh, but I think it's a beautiful way. It's cheap advertising for rational people to say, see, you know, look what those people do.
I agree with Sid. The German government has done everything possible. I mean, obviously it had quite a lot to compensate for during the Second World War, but since that time, unlike perhaps the Austrian government and the French government, the Germans have really done everything they possibly can to say we're ashamed of that. That is not German nationalism or German pride. Rebuilding of synagogues, welcoming Jewish community from Russia and so on. Bavaria, I've seen this with the Christian Social Union, which is actually very conservative. But on this issue, I think they really have tried very, very hard. It is a new Germany, and good for them.
I think the World Cup actually helped them to showcase that new Germany. You know, with the way that they ran, how smoothly that World Cup event ran, and you know, violence-free. beautiful stadia that they had.
Yeah.
You know, it was just really and truly. I think it was.
Only they would have finished the game. Anyway.
Oh, God, it's another Israel issue here. But it's.
Oh, God. What are you doing? You're loading these things up today or what?
I went off I was on India. You brought it back to Israel, for goodness sake.
Because he went off and brought it back.
Well, this is about the Gay Pride Parade. It was to be held in Jerusalem, which is very provocative. There's been a Gay Pride Parade in Tel Aviv for some years.
Beirut, maybe.
You know what, I have to say this. Lebanon is the only country in the world, it was in Beirut, where there actually was a conference of gay people. The only place of the Arab world where this happened. And you've got to congratulate them on that. It's partly because of the Christian and pluralistic culture of Lebanon, but that did occur. Tel Aviv has had a Gay Pride Parade for some time. They had one in Jerusalem last year. They wanted to have the international parade in Jerusalem. You had Christian, Muslim and Jewish groups all coming together saying, no, have it elsewhere. It would have been a compromise, and it's the right thing to say it'll be in Tel Aviv and not Jerusalem. This is a holy city, and there's a tiny, tiny gay community there. It barely exists at all. It will be moved. Then there was a leaflet that said 20,000 shekels for anyone who will kill a gay person.
Wow.
Now, that was just a handful of lunatics, and the police are arresting them. But the compromise will be, the parade will take place, the Supreme Court said it will take place, but not in a city where it will be so obnoxious to so many people. I think that's a fair compromise.
Probably it shows that there are two Israels in the sense that what goes on inside of Jerusalem is not really reflective of what goes on outside in terms of people's willingness to accept a gay parade, for instance. And if it was in Tel Aviv, I think it would probably pass off without any sort of...
Well, it has gone for years,
yeah. There wouldn't even be a mention of it. The fact that it's in Jerusalem, like the holy site, I would have liked to have seen these three religions actually come together to talk about something much more important, like they stop the fighting, for example.
Yeah.
That would have been really nice to see them coming together for that one. It's amazing how quickly they can come together when it's opposing somebody's...
Got a break. There's something to that, actually.
Rights.
Back in a few moments to round up and say goodbyes and all that. We'll see you very soon.
They're not doing that.
Don't go away. For me? Email from Carl Pike in Markham, Ontario. I finally found a show that I actually make time to watch. Intelligent and witty. Must be another show you're talking about. Michael can sometimes be overbearing. Yeah,
no kidding.
But on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll give him a 9. I think you meant overweight, not overbearing, but thank you very much for that. Sid Ryan, great to have you here. Paul McKeever, lovely to see you again. Claire Hoyer, again, always a pleasure. I'm off, actually, to Israel for about 2 weeks. Bill Kelly will be here from Monday hosting the show. Capable hands, you'll enjoy him. Until then, 2 weeks' time, take care, God bless, and goodbye.
Michael Coren's wardrobe supplied by Stolleries, serving Canada's business community for over 100 years. Stolleries at Bloor & Young.
Seventh Heaven is coming up next on CTS. Then stay tuned for Touched by an Angel tonight at 8. You're watching CTS, television you can believe in.